Artists, when you look into the sky after the rain, are you filled with wonder when you see a rainbow like I am? I certainly hope so. We're going to create a project inspired by that beautiful experience. It's going to be a rainbow mobile. Here's what you need to get started. You need a piece of thin corrugated cardboard. That means that there's some holes there at the top. You need some paints in rainbow colors. You can see that these are in pastel rainbow colors. You need a foam brush, a pair of scissors. We are going to be using this black and white yarn. You need a skewer with a pokey tip and perhaps some beads to embellish your mobile. Artists, the first step in our project is to get this cardboard ready to paint. I kind of eyeballed this and just set my foam brush in the center and drew a line on both sides. That gives me kind of a center point as I start to paint my first layer of the rainbow. If you have a hard time centering, you could also just use a ruler, and it should be just about 12 by 12, and you could mark right there in the center that 6 inches, and that way you know where the center of the rainbow is so it doesn't end up coming off the page. Let's spend a minute kind of visualizing how this rainbow is going to fit on a 12 by 12 square. So if I were to do a rainbow that was very, very wide, I likely would kind of run out of space at the edges. So what's going to work better is if I do kind of a skinny, narrow rainbow that builds out so that I can get all of my colors on there as much as possible. We also ought to review the colors of the rainbow. You can see here that we're using pastels. You could also use just the pure hue of each color, but we're going to go in this order: red starting at the top, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. Now, I do think it's easier to start backwards though, working from the center out, and so that's what you'll see me do here. I am going to work with one color at a time. As I paint, it's possible that the colors will overlap just a little bit, and that's fine. That's actually how a real rainbow works. The colors kind of blend from one to another. I also have some water and some paper towels to thoroughly dry my brush in between any kind of cleaning. That way I don't end up with more of a watercolor that doesn't really stand out on this cardboard. Here's what my process looks like. Artists, now that I have the rainbow painted, I'm going to let this dry for a few minutes, and then I'm going to flip it over and do the same thing on the back side. Because a mobile hangs from the ceiling and rotates all the way around, it's important that both the front and the back have the rainbow on it. Artists, now that this side is dry, and before I go ahead and paint the reverse, I'm going to take a moment to cut the rainbow out. Flip this over to the back side and do my best to recreate what I did on the front. Now, it may not work out perfectly, and you're going to see in the steps to come that that's totally fine, but I do want to just keep the rainbow order consistent, starting with the purple and moving to the red at the top. So here's my process. Artists, once both sides of your rainbow are painted and dry, you're ready to cut this into sections. I would suggest that you cut in between the orange and the yellow, so that would leave 2 colors in the outer ring. And then cut in between the green and the blue, so that gives you 3 layers that each have 2 colors. Now, as you cut, it may not perfectly line up, and I'm going to show you in a moment why that does not matter. Here we go. You'll see now that the rainbow is cut into 3 sections, and we're going to be attaching the string in between those sections so that these pieces can rotate within each other. The trick of it is they are not able to rotate if they fit perfectly inside. So what we need to do is to trim a bit off of each one of these sections so that there's actually enough space for the different parts of the rainbow to rotate. That process looks like this. The next step is to add our string. I'm going to start with the top piece, and I'm going to do about a hand span worth. This does not have to be exactly the same on each person. So you can see I have a double string here so I can tie it into a loop. So I'm going to do about that much and cut this. I have extra string if you need it. And I'm going to find the center point of the string. So there it is when it's folded in half. And then I'm looking for kind of the top of my cardboard. And you can see that because it's corrugated, there's actually holes that run the length of the cardboard. So we're going to use that to our advantage. Now I want to make sure that I'm pretty centered. I don't want to hang it, so that my rainbow is askew. I want it to be pretty much centered here on the rainbow. And what I'm going to do is take that end and I'm going to push it using my skewer into one of the holes. All right, it's looking like that is going to work, and it did hold the weight of it. Now I'm going to repeat the same process here, except this time I'm just using a single layer of the yarn. And I'm going to need to kind of line it up, shove it that way through the rainbow, and then also down. And then I'm going to do another connection between here and here. So this one is done using the skewer method, and I'm going to show you beading in a moment, but I also wanted to show you an alternative if you're struggling with the skewering of the yarn, because it is a bit tricky. There is another alternative that is perfectly acceptable. So another option would be to use your hole punch to pop through that cardboard, and instead of trying to squish it through the corrugated cardboard, you could just do a little knot in each of the same spots and just snip that end, and that works just as well if you prefer. The last step in our rainbow mobile is adding beads for embellishment. You could add them at the top before you tie off the end for hanging. You could also add some to the base. I have a selection of colors to choose from. Here's what mine's gonna look like. In this process, to help with any fraying that you might experience, because yarn is made of a lot of smaller little threads, one idea is to just add a little bit of tape. When you're done with the top, you're just going to tie a little knot. I'm going to do just a little loop here. You could tie it a different way as well. And this will give us a way to hang it up right there. So there's my little loop for hanging, and I just did a pattern. And now I'm going to move on to this bottom part as well. Artists, once you have the bottom beaded, then you're going to do the same thing. I would suggest maybe a double or even a triple knot, just because the pony beads have a little bit larger hole and we don't want them to just slip right off the yarn. And then snip off the end, and I have a mobile. Artists, here's what the mobile looks like outside, twirling around and hopefully brightening your day or someone else's day. Happy creating!